Okay, so we basically learned the rule or found that there's a rule how we can select all children of an element, regardless what those children are. So let's just try another example. Let's say we want all the children of the right container here. So again, we have to write same sort of selector, take a hash, the element is called right, then the children, the child operator, and now our wildcard. And you can see this gives us all those elements. And now let's say, I don't know, we want to give them some slide border. Say 5 pixels. And now you cannot really see this. They are having some border, but they are again being overwritten. So when we go to the right element, you can see the button has the border. The visual element for some reason is not having a border. That's a bit weird. Now, okay. That is again one little tiny bug. It sometimes happens that those elements, you have to specifically set the opacity, although it's basically although it should be basically set from the beginning. Now, again, we are with UI Toolkit in a pretty early version. Those are not deal breakers. Those are tiny little bugs that will happen now and then. But generally, generally all the stuff that we're doing here will work. It will just work better in the future because it will not have those bugs. Now, the label is not getting this border, but it is selected with the selector, as you can see here. Okay, so let's just throw away this rule. We don't want this kind of styling here. But what we kind of learned now is that whenever you want to have all children of an element, you can use this this selection. Now we could achieve the same result obviously by saying something like we don't want all elements, but we only want visual elements. Element, and you can see we are selecting the same two babies. And when we go to their background color and I don't know, want to change this, you can see it works beautifully. So we achieved the same result, but obviously I hope you understand that this only works because they are visual elements. If there was a label, for example, also in here as a baby, we would not have selected it. So if you want to select all the children, you have to use the wildcard selector. Okay, now this red, at least on my screen, is a little bit painful for my eyes, so I will change that back to orange. That works much better. And now we basically looked at this this child selector. Now, what we didn't really talk about is what does direct child mean. Now, I hope that makes basically sense to you already, that direct child means we are looking one level under the mommy element. So if, let's say, the orange element would itself have a very tiny baby, then we would not have selected this by this rule set. And we can demonstrate this on this left container here, because with this left container, when we look at its hierarchy, we have 3 direct children, and we have the mommy that itself has 2 children. So when we would use this direct children operator on the left container, we would expect to only get those 3 elements and not those two children. So let's see if that actually works. So let's select the left element, and let's say we want all its direct children. And what do we get? As you can see, we get those 3 visual elements. Let's now see what happens when we try to change their background color. No, nothing happens for the same reason as we had before. So again, let's just quickly go over them and unset the property on the elements themselves. And now you can see this property now kicks in. And now when we change the color, only those three elements are selected. Those two kind of grandchildren, because they are kind of the child of the child, they are not selected. So I think this is quite okay. So perfect. I think we understand a little bit something about this direct child selector. It only selects the children that are one level below in your hierarchy. Now, is there a way to select kind of everything under a certain element? And obviously there is a way, and that is just this next selector here that says child at any depth. So like technically it's not a child then, but it's a grandchild, or it's a child of the grandchild, and like stuff like that. Or in other words, it's a descendant of an element. And for this, the syntax is that you just leave a space here, as you can see. So let's try that out right now. Let's leave this window and let's see what could we use. Now, obviously, that's only really it only really makes sense to again apply this to this left container, because that's the only element that actually has grandchildren. And so when we go to left again and now do a space and now use the wildcard character, the wildcard selector, I'm sorry. Now you can see we are selecting all the descendants of the left element. So that means all the elements that are starting from this node in the hierarchy, right? So in this case, it's all those five elements. And now let's try if we can do something with them. I don't know, maybe let's try a border again, although I'm afraid we might get into some bug again. So I will first change the opacity. I will give it some, let's say 5 pixels of border, and you can see they are already getting a border. Let's just change the color to make this more visible, like that. Yeah, and great. You can see just like that, we were able to select all the descendants of the left container. Now, this might not be the nicest border here, but I just have 5 colors pre-selected. Maybe that's a little bit nicer. Okay, but it's no Picasso, but it's better than the gray stuff, right? Okay, so we covered 2 ways how you can select elements on different levels in your hierarchy. And by that, you should basically be able to select every element that you want in any kind of hierarchy that you want. Because now with those 1-level selectors that we had, types, IDs, and classes and wildcards, you can select everything on any arbitrary level, and then you can go down and say, I want all descendants, and then from all those descendants, I want children, whatever you want. This is kind of, those are basically those superpowers that I was talking about, because that way you can be as precise as you have to be. Now, let's see, we basically now did this for 2 levels. Can we also do this for more than 2 levels? So if we, for example, wanted a very complicated way how we could select those 2 buttons, one way we could achieve this is to say, let's choose the container element. You can see this is the element that is kind of on the top of the hierarchy. Then take all of its children. Now, what is that selecting? This is selecting this left, center, and right element. So we have those 3 elements. And now from those, let's say that we only want the buttons. Now let's see if that's actually working. Yes, voila, you can see we have selected those 2 buttons. And now, for example, I don't know, let's do something with them. Let's, for example, say, I don't know, let's change something about the text size to 20, for example. And you can see we were able to select those 2 buttons, and we did this kind of on 2 hierarchy levels. And obviously that goes infinitely deep. When you have 10 levels in your hierarchy, you could theoretically select your elements like that, but probably there is a simpler way to do that. And obviously for those two buttons, like we could only select the one type selector for buttons because we just have two buttons. So there are always several ways to, or mostly several ways to select your elements, and there are often bad ways and more efficient and better ways. This would probably not be the easiest way to reach those two buttons. But just again to be able to read the syntax, that is basically the most important thing. How do you interpret that? Now take your container element, take all direct children, because of the wildcard we get all of them no matter what type they are. And then from those elements, take just the elements that are buttons. And now you can obviously also combine those child and descendant selectors. If we did this here, that would work in the same way, because now we are saying take the container, take all of its children. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't actually rename that. I see. Like this. Yes, now it works the same. It's a little bit, you almost don't see the space here between the star and the button, but there should be a space. There is a space. And we interpret this space as the descendant character. So with this container direct children, we had the left, right, and the center element, and we take any button that is at any height, at any level of those three elements, and those buttons are just direct children, so they are also descendants, obviously. I hope that that's clear, that every child is a descendant, not every descendant is a direct child. Okay, so we actually covered almost everything there is to cover with those selectors, at least for some, like the devil is always in the details, obviously. But what we didn't do here now is combine this, for example, with a class selector. So let's just see if we can do that. Now let's just do something rather stupid. Let's say, I don't know, we want the center and the right here. Now this obviously is a stupid name for a class generally, but what I want to show you is that we don't necessarily have to use, we can use classes simply to navigate through those elements. We don't necessarily have to set anything specific, a specific style on the class. So what I mean by that is when I give this class to the center and the right element, because that's how those classes are named, how this class is named. So we can see now the center and the right element have this class. And now let's say we want to get those two squares here with something like, I don't know, let's change there, let's give them some rounded corners. So in order to do that, what I would now have to do is go center right and say give me the children that are visual elements. Let's see if that works. Yes, you can see we are selecting our two squares. And now we said we wanted to do something with them. Let's say we give them some rounded corners. We give them some actual border, and let's make it a little bit more like that, a little bit more bluish. Although for me, it again seems pretty black. But okay, so that worked. Now, and you can see the kind of a little bit special thing that we did here is that this center right class, it has basically, it has nothing set on itself. Now we can see when we select a class and we go through those elements, there are no white markers here whatsoever. So we did not set anything on the class. We just used this class to be able to navigate. So that's also something that you can see, that you can use. So setting those styles, those properties here is actually independent of whatever selector you have here. You can just use a class for pure navigation, for pure navigational purposes, just as we did right here, because we wanted to say we give the center and the right element. We want to do something just with the center and the right element. And that is one way how to select it. And then the rest is just as we did before, child selector, type selector, and we get our two squares.